Okay, my brothers and sisters, let me tell you a little story. I downloaded Threads recently, which I keep forgetting is a thing. Those who know me know that I don't like social media and I seldom post on it. But I was traveling and I was bored in between my flights, so I decided to check it out. And it ended up being kind of what I've been looking for a long time. There are a lot of bots, there are a lot of people that type like they're bots, but my Threads page was mostly musicians and artists. And these aren't creatives that are just posting their art or, making some dumb jokes or their usual social media crap. These are people who are asking questions regarding art in authentic and honest ways. And these are sometimes pretty meaningful or interesting questions as well. These are questions that I've asked myself before. I haven't really had the pleasure of sharing these types of conversations and questions with other people, especially not on social media, so naturally I was pretty drawn to this. I first thought this was some sort of, engagement bait, but if that was 100% true, then that's what Twitter would look like. Artists on Twitter aren't asking these things. They're just promoting their art, they're just making dumb jokes, they're just rage baiting. They wouldn't be these. Now, I'm not saying these are the most, thought-provoking questions or anything like that. Some of them are pretty simple, but they're honest. And I'd much rather interact with someone that's trying to learn something on a guitar than just some dumb Twitter post. So this was exciting to me. I've made videos on this channel along the lines of the questions being asked here. That's basically what my perfect practice series is. But it didn't take long for me to find the part that I didn't like. Part of the reason why Twitter never worked for me is because I think a lot of the artists on there have a very unhealthy relationship with their art. There's a lot of complaining about issues that I never struggled with. And soon enough, I started seeing these same types of posts on Threads. These are, the complaints and the unhealthy relationships with their art. An example of this, and I'm paraphrasing here, I get really uncomfortable when someone criticizes my art. I get doubtful about my validity as an artist. This thing triggers the part of me that believes I'm not an artist. You should always create art, even on the days you don't feel like it. Why do people feel the need to criticize my art? And with the amount of posts I was seeing like this, I had to ask, do you guys even enjoy being artists? Do you enjoy being creative? Do you enjoy doing creative things? I think not, and hence the title of this video. There are tons of videos out there telling you how to make money as a musician, how to do this professionally and all that, but I think a lot of you struggle from an entirely different issue. You don't even enjoy this in the first place. Then I had another question I asked. So why do people let a label, the label of musician or writer or artist, have so much control over their inner well-being? Why is it painful for you to doubt your validity as an artist? Why is it painful for you to not create art every day? I think about the examples I mentioned, and I haven't suffered from really any of these things in quite a long time. Despite playing guitar for 14 years, making music for 6 years, singing for 2 years, I've almost never questioned my identity as an artist. None of the triggers that I mentioned in those previous posts ever triggered me or got any reaction out of me. And it's not because I believe with absolute certainty that I am an artist. It's because I never gave any significant amount of weight or meaning to the label artist. I only started calling myself an artist last year, and that was for the sake of simplicity in conversation. I see posts talking about how normal these sorts of struggles are for artists, and I agree that they're normal, but my point of this video is that they don't have to be the norm. You don't have to live your life as an artist like this. You can actually fully enjoy your creative life and thrive in it. That's what I've been doing. I hope I can do my best here to help other artists who go through these ups and downs and these general struggles with their relationship to their art. And there are a few different problems I'd like to address. Before we go into addressing the problems, we have to address some definitions. So when I hear the term artist, I think of anyone that creates art. Where I think online, most people think of someone who's doing art full time, making money from it. I can't always tell when people mean what definition, so for the sake of this video, when I say artist, I mean anyone that makes art. Whenever someone else says artist, I'm assuming they mean anyone else that makes art. I know that might not make sense because of what I just said about what they probably mean, but that's kind of the point in itself, so we'll understand as we go forward. And if I mean professional artist, I will say professional artist. By the end of this, you won't even care about the term artist. You might not even call yourself one, which if that scares you, if that makes you uncomfortable, you are exactly part of the target audience for this video. The other mistake that I might make here is taking these posts a bit too seriously. What I mean by that is there's nothing wrong with talking about art as a philosophical exercise, but you get into some tricky territory if you start taking these things a bit too seriously when it comes to the bigger picture and your journey. For example, you know, I'll see threads all the time that are like, artists should always do blah blah blah, and it's quite obvious that the answer is like, no, they shouldn't. Maybe the intention was just to kind of get that conversation started, which, you know, I think conversation and debate around this kind of stuff is great and healthy. But I might be taking those posts a bit too seriously, so if so, my mistake. And yes, I fully understand the irony of me saying don't take this stuff too seriously and then me making a video about basically the same thing. But we ball. And I'm gonna use the terms artist and creative here interchangeably. And because I'm a musician, I might say musicians or music. Just know that pretty much every time I say that, you can replace that with artist or creative, and then you can replace music with art, whatever art you want. Most of us, when we're growing up, are getting used to society. We're getting a very elementary understanding of how the different systems our society is built off of works. The legal system, the education system, but most importantly, the social systems. We start making friends, we start making enemies. Some of this stuff is intuitively learned, and the rest of it is taught to us. Our family influences us, society influences us, our peers influence us, and as you might have guessed, society influences how we see creatives and artists. Most of that influence is awful. So listen up, children, class is in session. The first thing that happens at a very early age, we learn that artists are somehow different. Oh, this person is creative. They see the world differently. Their struggles, their joy is so intense and different that simple words are too mortal to express them. These people are not normal. Everything they experience, you can never experience. So, already, not only has that seed of romanticization been placed in our heads, but it's being gay-kept as well. You're either a creative person or you're not. You either experience the world in color and these, you know, mysterious emotions that you don't quite get, or you don't. And you can never understand how that feels. Maybe my experience is different here, but I've also noticed kids that are more like book smart and intellectual are never really gate-kept in this way. They are to a certain extent for sure, but if you study hard, you can get there too. But creatives, they're just born creative and special. It also doesn't help here that the way people react to you when they find out you have some sort of meaningful creative ambition, quite honestly, it doesn't have to be meaningful and it barely has to be ambitious, is just an extension of how society has programmed us to view creatives. They start treating you like, you know, you're this cool anime protagonist. Their eyes and face light up like they're seeing a once-in-a-lifetime person. It feels nice at first, but it feeds your ego. And it augments the idea in your head further that you are somehow different and special as a creative. Now, there's a difference between genuine interest and encouragement. That obviously is really nice and I think great, but that's not the same as the romanticization that people tend to do. And as we will get to later, this also reinforces your identity as an artist, which so many of you have deluded yourselves into thinking that this is a good thing. Trust me, it is not a good thing. It's a very slippery slope, and I think 90% of people out there are not ready to have being an artist such a core part of their identity. We'll dive into all that later. The other thing that happens is that society has already started to put you in a box. It's okay to not know how to express what you're feeling. You should be misunderstood. You should be struggling, or else the art that you make is not as valid and you yourself are not a real artist. Another pattern is that A lot of those kids that are book smart, intellectually gifted, almost always have some sort of creative interest. It's actually encouraged in a lot of those people. I can't think of one person that I know in that category that doesn't have some sort of creative interest that they like to do. But the opposite is never true. You never see creative people getting encouraged to do things that are not creative. Hustle culture plays another role in why so many of us have an unhealthy relationship with art. So most of us know what hustle culture is by now, right? Dedicate every waking hour into work, don't sleep, screw all balance in your life, basically. Who cares about any of that? Just all that matters is the success and the grind set. Of course, this affected creatives as well. Suddenly, this is not an activity that you partake in for your own interest and enjoyment. Nope, you need to be making a living off of your art, and you need to be constantly putting it out there. Or else, what are you? What are you doing? Why are we still here? As people internalize these messages, this only pushed that sphere-shaped identity block of artist into the much too small square hole. So you've not only tied your success as an artist to your creative input, but the amount of money you're making here as well. So pay attention here. This is a very significant mindset change. And I see this mindset being propagated all over social media. If you don't make enough money, the number one thing people start doing is questioning their validity as an artist. If their creative output isn't high, oh, I don't know if I'm a real artist. All of this is bullshit, okay? All of it. What even is a real artist here? I can guarantee you everyone has a different definition of that. And furthermore, why does it matter? What happened to the joy of making the art that you wanted to make? These are all questions we will get into later. I have to cover some other ground first, but the answers to those questions, or even the exploration of those questions, hold the key to enjoying your life as a creative. Like I said, I really only started calling myself an artist last year, and that was for the sake of simplicity when I talk to people, right? That's easier to say than, oh, I do this, and then sometimes that, and also this. I don't associate that. I don't associate artist with my identity, because that's when you get all of these problems. So ask yourself these questions. Are you not an artist on the days that you don't make art? If I make art on Monday, am I an artist on Monday? And if I don't make art on Tuesday, am I an artist on Tuesday? Really, pause the video and think about this for a few minutes. I don't think there's necessarily a right or wrong answer here, and maybe you don't know your answer, which is fine, but you have to start thinking about these things. If a child asks you, what is an artist? What are you gonna say? Are you gonna say, oh, little Timmy, an artist is someone who makes art every day and makes all their money off of it? I'm willing to bet most people won't say that. So I'm not sure why we apply that definition to ourselves. The truth is, you need breaks. They are actually a part of the creative process. That's the very first lesson in my Perfect Practice series, right? 80% of the advice I give to musicians is some form of take a break. I might word it differently, I might apply it differently in their context, but it's really all just the same advice. Just take a goddamn break. You'd be surprised how much this can actually improve your creative abilities. I enjoy making music. I've been doing it for 6 years, honestly, probably more than 6 years, probably more closer to a decade. Yet I don't do it every day. Does that disqualify me from being an artist? Because I don't play guitar every day, does that make me not a guitarist? Not every song I make is born from struggle, and I barely make any money from it. I don't worry about whether I'm an artist or not. My focus is on the work, and I can focus on the work because I enjoy it. Okay, and this might be my favorite part of the video just because of how many people do it. Romanticization. I've written that word 100 times in the script, and each time I've misspelled it. It's a hard word to spell and say. Okay, bruh. The amount of people that I see that love to romanticize being an artist, I don't know if there's an architect that can build a structure to house them all. Being an artist means seeing the beauty and magic in the world. that not everyone notices. Also the horrors. Okay, like what in the bruh are you saying? Artists can see the beauty and horrors of the world? What? Can you see beyond the visible light spectrum? Are you just out here seeing fucking gamma rays and infrared light? Guys, being an artist does not make you a cool, mysterious anime protagonist. We can experience things in our own way, and that's fine, but there's nothing special about it. People all over the world experience different beauties and horrors. This is not something that's special to artists. Loosen your grip on reality and... So I just realized that this person put quotes on reality, like reality just doesn't fucking exist. It's not a real thing. Anyways, loosen your grip on reality and realize that artists are supposed to live wildly creative lives. Your journey doesn't have to make sense to anybody, not even yourself right now. Trust it and go all in. Okay, so loosen your grip on reality. Artists are supposed to live wildly creative lives. You know, this also feeds into the hustle culture part of it a little bit, where you're supposed to be doing creative things all the time. Let me make this clear. Artists are not supposed to do anything. Do you really think that artists are out here just writing a book in the morning, making a song after lunch, painting a picture in the afternoon? No, they're not. So tell me, why should an artist live a wildly creative life? Not all of them do, and they are fine. There are no shoulds here. And again, you know, treating artists like they're more divine than mere mortals. Like, loosen your grip on reality? What does that even mean? The subtle message here is to loosen your grip on reality because artists are somehow more ethereal and above reality. No, art is real. We are humans, just like other people are humans. You are not above anyone. Oh, dude, this one's a banger, okay? The weirdest part of being an artist, I believe it's the dichotomy of your identity. You are going to be someone's favorite artist. You are going to mean so much to a group of people. And the very next person will see you as the girl that served their table a few times and nothing more. Or the girl that dated their brother in high school. Exist in the gray. Self-identify and define who you are to you. Someone's gold, someone else's dirt, neither have bearing on who you truly are. Yeah, look, I mean, look, to my mom, I'm the most handsome, intelligent young boy, right? But to the guy that I cut off on the highway this morning, I am a piece of shit. The dichotomy of your identity? Okay, so here we see it again. What makes you think that only artists go through this? This might be like the most universal experience ever. Every human has experienced this. Once again, you are not special. This is also such a non-issue. Like that's just called life, man. People have different opinions of you based on the context that they meet you in because different parts of you are showing and they make their mind up based on that. Now, I do have to give this person credit. What they said at the end is much healthier than what they said before. That's kind of, you know, the better way to think about it. I just don't understand how this person said both things, because one's like not at all what she's saying in the rest of the post. Become a creativity addict. Form a dependency on the creative spirit within instead of dependencies on outward vices. Do not form a dependency on anything, please. Your internal creative spirit, contrary to what you believe, will not be some sort of infinite fountain of creativity. It will take breaks. It will fluctuate in its function, and that's fine. That's how it is. We see all the time how many people struggle with creative blocks. So I mean, this is like easily like disprovable. Now, I completely agree with the not forming a dependency on outward vices as well, but I really don't agree with the become a creativity addict part. And you also have to recognize that your, you know, internal fountain of creativity, as I just called it, will not always function. Write on the days you don't feel like it. Doesn't matter if you create garbage. Reinforce the identity of a writer by showing up. I actually replied to this one. I feel like there is definitely a time and place for this, but not writing when you don't feel like it is completely valid and oftentimes helpful. Reinforcing an identity, especially that of a creative one, is a slippery slope. I've seen it do more harm than good. Just focus on the work. Okay, so what are the common threads here? Man, dude, I need a water break. Holy. There's a constant theme of placing the artist above the average person, or at least different from the average person. Whether that's because their struggle means something more, or they are more divine somehow, so that's romanticizing. And there's a constant theme of having being an artist play such a critical and central role in your life, your identity. Romanticizing the artist. Okay, so I think to an extent, we as humans are sort of programmed to romanticize things. We do it all the time. We know it's bad, but we still do it. I think some things are relatively harmless. Wow. I think some things we romanticize are relatively harmless, but romanticizing things that involve yourself or other people is generally quite unhealthy. So I'll give you two examples. Romanticizing a relationship is unhealthy. You're building the idea of a relationship in your head that's basically a fantasy, and you're completely ignoring the other person's feelings and personality. It is very likely you'll be disappointed by the results of the relationship because it doesn't follow that relationship you've built up in your head. And you won't even understand how the other person feels because you're not listening to them. You would have been better off just taking the relationship for what it was and building off of that, building off of actually getting to know the other person better. So in this case, when romanticizing, not only do you get disappointed, you're actually actively hurting another person as you do it. You're placing expectations on them that are unrealistic and baseless, and once again, you're ignoring them. You're hurting them emotionally by ignoring them. You're ignoring a living human being right in front of you. Okay, so the other example, let's take people that romanticize cities. I'm actually kind of a great example of this. The number one place I want to visit in the world is Hong Kong, and this really only stems from me playing Sleeping Dogs back in the day and being like, damn,
Man who never eats pork butt is never a whole man.
maybe I really want to be a sleeping dog too. Rest in peace, Sleeping Dogs 2. We're never getting that game. So I looked up stuff about the city, and it seems like a cool place. Now, I know that I have this expectation of the city being this cool, PS3 era graphics coded place, and I'm fully aware I may be disappointed by the city, but romanticizing here is only going to affect my view of an inanimate object. I haven't looped anyone else into this or myself. If I romanticize the people there, that'd be different, right? That'd be unhealthy because it's other people. And this also has nothing to do with my identity. So romanticizing being a creative is kind of it's like getting stabbed in the chest twice, because you're romanticizing yourself and your identity. You are setting yourself up for failure. You are putting your identity and therefore your mental well-being on a table whose legs are built on lies and rainbow fairy tales. You don't need to struggle to create good art. You should have the privilege of experiencing your hardship free of any creative interference or obligation. Now, I'm not saying that you have to do that all the time, but what I am saying is you don't have to do the opposite all the time. I know it genuinely does help sometimes to view your hardship in that way, and that's completely valid and fine, but what I'm saying is that you should never lock yourself in that cage. Everything that happens in your life does not need to be filtered through the lens of an artist. You deserve the privilege of experiencing your life free from any creative obligation or interference. Don't confuse a common life experience as something special that happened to you because you're an artist. Like I said before, lots of people around the world experience many different things regardless of who they are. Being betrayed is not a unique experience. Getting your heart broken is not something exclusive to the artist. Your life is not supposed to follow some arbitrary artist roadmap. Your creative journey does not have to be anything. It doesn't have to follow the fantasy in your head, and it doesn't have to follow the fantasy that society and these influencers have fed you. There's also the identity part of it all, which we'll get to eventually, but you can really start to see the cycle here. Children internalize this message of, oh, you're either creative or you're not, and you're special, and then you grow up, and then you start spreading the exact same message out into the world. It's a really up cycle when you think about it. You shouldn't romanticize things that you've made so core to your identity. What happens to you when you can't perform to the standard that you've set for yourself? How do you feel as a singer when you can't sing well one day? How do you feel as a writer when nothing's coming to you. People let experiences like this eat them up because this isn't just having a bad day anymore, this is putting your entire identity at risk. And that always comes with guilt and shame. You've identified yourself as an artist, and you've been led to believe that artists should create every day or need to suffer to succeed. So if you don't do that, if you don't create every day, if you don't suffer, then you are not a real artist. And that's when you get all these problems. Identity. So I wrote the first 3 parts of the script, and the common themes were romanticization and identity. That is basically the 2 things I keep looping back to. So where do I fit into all this, right? Why am I talking about this? And why don't I struggle from these issues? I had a pretty different relationship with music growing up. My entire life, basically. Music wasn't really a thing in my household. I never listened to artists or bands. I just listened to music that I liked. I still had that seed planted of artists are special, but because I never interacted with art on a deep level, that seed didn't grow as much as some others. I was also in the intellectual camp of kids. I never felt creative as a kid. I thought I didn't have any in me. You see the dots connecting? I was gate-kept just on the other side. I am not a creative, and I can never understand what it is to be one. So at 7, I started learning guitar. Now at this point in my life, I know I'm not a creative. In a sense, this gatekeeping actually sort of helped me because I knew that I couldn't switch over to the other side. So I had no expectations at all when learning guitar because I was already told that I couldn't be good at this kind of thing. I had no music I wanted to play, I had no guitar heroes, I had no music idols, so I had no expectations. But I thought it was cool and I had fun doing it, so I did it. I kept playing, and at 14 years old, I realized that I at least did have some sort of creativity in me. And a few years after that, I was convinced I was actually in the other camp now. I thought I was in the, creative kids camp. And then years later, I realized that I'm actually both. Remember, you can be both. And at the end of the day, these things aren't even real, right? These are categories that we have made. So, long story short, I never put any significant amount of investment or meaning into the title of artist. The thing I loved about music was the work. I loved making music. I loved learning guitar. That's what I enjoyed. And the title of musician or artist is completely unrelated to that. It doesn't matter what you call yourself, you can make art. Just think about this. Making art is an action. Someone who's a physicist, who's spent decades of their life studying physics, can decide to one day write a song on the piano. Does that make them an artist? I don't know, and I don't really care. I always get asked if I want to do music as a hobby or career. Again, I don't really even think about it like that. It's just something I enjoy doing. That's not the mindset that I approach music with. Hobby or career, I don't know. The only thing I know is that I make art and that I enjoy it. The thing I keep coming back to is focus on the work, not the title, not the label. Those are distractions of the ego that will not help you at all. You don't need to be an artist to do the work. You should make music to make music. Not to be a musician. You should write your book to write the book, not to be a writer. Focus on the work, not the label. And this is why I believe making any creative endeavor such a core part of your identity is an extremely slippery slope. Because by making it part of our identity, we sort of have to focus on the opposite of the work. We have to focus on that label. We have to focus on the title that we gave ourselves. And that's where you get all these other issues. Okay, so basically everything I've been discussing has been documented in a sense. I wrote the first 3 parts of the script before realizing what all this I was talking about actually was. All of this stuff, focus on the work, not the label, not tying things to your identity. We know what that is. So this is something called detachment. Everything I've been talking about has been describing how to detach from music. Now hold on, because I know people hear that. People hear detach from blah, blah, and they get, super scared and skeptical. That's because most people don't know what that actually means. So bear with me. And I've also done my best to explain why we are so attached to music. I can't actually find where this concept originated from. I look it up and I get like these fucking how-to tutorials of how to detach your truck trailer from your truck, because, you know, all our society cares about is facts and logic, so who cares about these, you know, philosophical concepts? There was this video by a Healthy Gamer that was actually the one that I watched that made me realize what everything I've been writing is, so that's a good source that you can go to. Detachment is when you focus on the work and not the label. The idea is that you're detaching from your ego, from your identity, away from the label, and moving towards the work. I'm going to show you some examples of being attached as it relates to artists. So far I've been focusing on ego, on identity, on labels, things which artists attach themselves to, but as a result, you also end up attaching yourself to the results. So, you know, all these things are sort of linked. And I think sometimes the results end up reinforcing the attachment to the ego. Hey, guess what? It's okay to be where you are at on your instrument. I have my days where I feel like Guthrie Govan, and some days I feel like I just picked it up. That's okay, just keep playing, you'll get wherever you're trying to get. Just because you aren't where you want to be in your art career doesn't mean your art isn't good enough or you aren't doing enough. Just keep being passionate and doing what you love, and it will all catch up. So I actually agree with like 90% of what both of these people said, but they do both say things that are harmful. And it's the you'll get wherever you're trying to get and the it will all catch up parts. So notice this, right? Be very careful. This is still attachment. You are still playing the game of, oh, am I a real artist or am I not a real artist? Oh, I don't know. But you're just on the other side now. Whereas what you need to do is ditch this game altogether. Stop playing the game of, am I a real artist or am I not a real artist? The truth is, it may not all catch up. There is a possibility that you will never get to where you want. What you have to understand is why you want to get there in the first place. If it's related to your ego and identity, you can't trust it. It's not a healthy goal. It's fine to have these goals, but it's risky to be attached to them. So you can still have these goals and be detached. Those are two things are entirely possible. If you don't believe you will achieve the goals that you've attached yourself to, you feel like crap, right? If you think you will achieve the goals, you're only reinforcing the identity that you've set. And like we've discussed, this brings all those other problems. And even if you do accomplish the goal, what next? Your goal is only going to grow and grow because you need to keep proving yourself over and over. You keep needing to prove your identity over and over again. You won't be satisfied and you're eventually gonna fail, and then you're gonna go through the process of feeling like crap. So actually, accomplishing the goal is almost worse because your identity goes through more turmoil than it would have if you just failed from the beginning. This video is a great example. I put a lot of focus, a lot of effort, and a lot of purpose into this. That's dangerous. I could be expecting a lot from how this video does. If I identify myself as a smart, philosophical guy that can make this kind of content and the video doesn't do well, then I go through all this questioning about my identity, right? If I get encouraged by my friends telling me,
oh, don't worry, man, the video's great, it's gonna get 1 million views,
and I feel good about that, I'm still holding on to that same game of being like, oh, I actually am a really great philosophical smart guy because this video will do well. I am not attached to how this video does. I haven't tied my identity to it, and I'm focused on the work. My experience and how I've treated music helps me to not be attached to this. Also, what is good enough? What does that actually mean? Okay, let's get specific about this. Do some introspection here. What does good enough mean to you? What metrics are you using to measure good enough? What does it do for you internally when something you've made is not good enough? I think a better way to sum this up is, if you label yourself as an artist, what happens when you make art that's good enough? Does your value increase? What happens if you make art that's not good enough? Does your value decrease? And what would happen if you just labeled yourself as a person? Does the meaning of your art not being good enough change? Do the metrics of good enough change? That's something to think about. What happens when a person, not an artist, a person makes art that isn't good enough? Okay, so how do you actually go about undoing this conditioning, undoing this attachment? I've told you what's going on, but not how to get out of the trap. So there isn't really a surefire way to do this, not one that I've discovered anyways, but I think that knowing that you're in this trap is a good first step. And trust me, that really is harder than you think. A lot of people are in this trap and they don't even realize it. This is my best attempt at a checklist of how to enjoy being an artist. Okay, so step 1, allow negative criticism. Step 2, take a break. Step 3, there are no shoulds in music. And when I say shoulds here, I also mean like musts, have to. There are no musts, there are no have tos in music. Or in art, I mean, yeah. Okay. Before we get, these people in the comments, I can already hear them typing.
No, but you should never listen to haters, man.
Okay, 2 things. First of all, obviously don't listen to those people that are just gonna baselessly hate on your art or on you, okay? We're all adults. We can do some reading in between the lines here. And second, not everyone that criticizes your art is a hater. It doesn't matter who you are, valid criticism of your art exists. And let me make this clear. I am not saying you need to change your art based on the feedback and criticism that you get. I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying is that you have to be open to the idea that valid criticism of your art exists. Your art is as valid as the criticism that it gets. If you can't take, accept, or even look at criticism, that's because your ego is involved. So pay attention to this. The next time you get some sort of negative feedback, really pay attention to what feedback that is, and pay attention to your reaction. If your identity is so tied to the fact that you're an artist, of course you're gonna get super defensive about criticism. Because not only are they critiquing your art, they are now coming at your identity. So there's a bit of a defense mechanism here where you tend to discredit negative feedback because you need to protect your identity. You need to protect your ego, your entire sense of being. And I'm not saying you need to change your art through that feedback that you get. All I'm saying is you should acknowledge that there are going to be people that don't like your art, and you are not above them. Your art is not above criticism. I used to feel some type of way if someone said something against my art, and then I realized they may not be open-minded, and realized they have personal opinions based off of personal experience. Okay, so the last line here I actually agree with. People have personal opinions that have been shaped by their experiences. That's totally cool and fine to recognize that. However, you default to people not being open-minded because they don't like your art. Maybe, just maybe, they don't like your art because they don't like your art, and that's that. And again, you kind of had it right in the second half. They don't like it because they have different experiences that shape their opinions. But before that, you're actually saying that people who don't like your art, that means something is wrong with them. Think about how egotistical that is. You're not dealing with criticism here. You're shielding your ego. And the irony here is that saying that actually makes you the closed-minded person. The fact that you can't even fathom that someone would not like your art. Listen to the feedback as honestly as you can and judge it as honestly as you can. Again, I'm not saying to accept and incorporate every piece of feedback. I am not saying that at all. This is an exercise in not shielding your ego and not getting so defensive about this. Personally, I love a lot of the music that I make, and I understand that people have problems with it. I can analyze what they said, I can see if I agree, and if I don't agree, then I won't end up changing it, and I'm okay with that because I'm not trying to live up to any standard here. My band just released their debut single, check it out, Impulse Reality by Lost in Us, available on all streaming platforms. We've gotten critiques that I don't agree with, but I understand that people have their own opinions, and that's fine. The music I've written is not above criticism. I like how I've made it, so I don't agree with the criticism, but I acknowledge it's there. I am not above anyone. My music, my art is not above criticism. That is what you have to realize. That is what you have to practice so you don't get so defensive about this. I really hate the entitlement that comes with asking someone how they got something when they worked hard and long for that same thing. I didn't get anything. Okay, so guys, saying got is just how people speak, right? When you were asked if you got something, they're not saying that you didn't work for it. We're being picky with semantics here for no reason. Well, actually there is a reason, ego. You don't have to assume the worst in people, right? Not everyone is out to get you. They didn't say you didn't work for it. You are interpreting that yourself. When people find out I'm a working drummer, they often ask what kind of music I do. My answer is always a lot. Just as we aren't likely to only enjoy one style of music, why are musicians only expected to play one style? Okay, so, again, no one here is saying you're only expected to play one style. That is a very normal question. What type of music do you play, or what type of music are you into? There's nothing stopping you from giving more than one answer, right? Like, this question itself, it doesn't set you up for only one answer. You're actually creating a problem out of nowhere here. If you see this as a problem, your ego is probably involved. I actually find it very strange that someone's taking the time to show interest about your music and to get to know you, and you're offended by this. People ask me this all the time. I have no issue listing off all the different styles and genres that I play. Alright, so I've already made a video about this in my Perfect Practice series. Take a break. Let your mind and your body live and breathe away from your art. Realize that if you take a week, 2 weeks, a month away from your art, the world will not end, okay? Despite all of the investment and purpose that you derive from your art, the world does not end. The world does not revolve around you making art. Everything is fine. Not only does taking a break actually help your art and your creative abilities, but you need to undo the conditioning and attachment to the craft itself a bit, right? So watch the video, Perfect Practice, I'll link it somewhere. There are no shoulds in art. You don't have to do anything. Just because you write in a certain genre doesn't mean that you can create art that deviates from that genre. Catch yourself the next time you think you should be doing something. A great example of this is a comment that I got in a video. I was covering a song on my 8 string when the original uses a 6. And I did this because none of my 6 strings were in the right tuning. My 8 string was. You can play a 6 string song on an 8, so I just played it on my 8. And I got someone commenting that I should be playing this on a 6. Brother, why? Is there some sort of guitar police out here that's gonna come knocking on my door being like, oh, well, you violated Rule 64. One must not play songs on the ill amount of strings. Why should I be playing it on a 6? Because the original was on a 6? But why? Why do I have to play it on a 6 because the composer did? You realize that's not really a reason, right? What does that mean? You need to give yourself the space and the freedom to experiment within art. You need to break away from these shoulds. Now, I know that I don't need to play the song on a 6 because I'm an experienced guitarist at this point. I know how to separate the good advice from bad advice. But now imagine a young guitarist, maybe 12 years old, maybe you've been playing for 2 years. Imagine they read a comment like that. They don't know what's good advice or not. They're already learning that you shouldn't experiment in art and that you have to follow all these arbitrary rules. This goes back to how society influences us in negative ways, and a lot of it comes from other artists. Your song does not need to sound like anything. If you feel like it does, why? Why should it sound like something? Is it to inflate your ego? Is it to prove how much of a marvelous writer you are? If it sounds that way, does that make you a real musician? When you go through this process, you aren't serving the song. You aren't focusing on the work, you are focusing on what should be. You're focusing on the distraction that your ego loves to latch onto. These shoulds are so ingrained into your head and the writing process, you won't even know when you're succumbing to them. You have to practice some introspection here and really catch yourself in these moments and question them. Your reasons might not be the same ones that I listed above, though I suspect they probably are, but maybe they're not, right? That's for you to find out. So again, practice some introspection here. This is a skill that you're really gonna have to develop if you wanna break out and find out why you have these shoulds. And if your reason has to do with your ego or anything else that's not serving the song, it's not helping you, it's distracting you from the joy of creating and the joy of the work. So a lot of these issues, as we know, stem from people wanting to be real artists, right? That's been somewhat of a common thread throughout here. And I'm gonna get a little crazy, a little wacky here, okay? I'm gonna loosen my grip on reality, as they say. There is no such thing as artist. It's not real. Like, there's no biological indicator of real artists. You can't just take a blood sample from me and then be like, oh yeah, I found the artist particle. Yep, he has it, everyone, he has it.
What's the ETA?
Couple minutes. Look.
Jesus Christ. Why the hell are we smuggling an artist?
I'm not an
artist. No? Just lying.
There's no physical marker of an artist. This isn't a real thing. And yet we find ourselves so caught up in trying to achieve this imaginary status. This is something that is very much a construct that has been made by us. We're so desperately obsessed with being seen as a real artist. It just doesn't do us any good. It makes us miserable. Even the biggest artists on the planet struggle with this. So ask yourself why? Why put yourself through this torture? So after all this, after undoing all the conditioning, you'll find that the songwriting, the art creating process, whatever it is a lot easier. And you're gonna end up loving a lot of the stuff that you end up making. You've removed all the roadblocks from you and the final product. I know this might sound weird to say, but I've really hit a stride in my songwriting recently, ever since I really started to learn how to detach. And I really haven't written a song that I haven't liked since then. I'm not saying I'm the best writer ever, right? My art has valid criticism, just as everyone. I am not above anyone. My art is not above anyone. But I have been satisfied with my own stuff for the past 2 years. And now I'm almost at a point where I'm thinking, how could you not be satisfied with art that you've made? You made the art, not anyone else. You made it. And you know what you like. So how do you end up with something that you don't like? Now again, I know that's extreme, but it's just kind of been my experience recently. It feels so easy and obvious to make art that you like. I'm willing to bet that a big reason why you don't experience this is because you have all these shoulds and you have this unhealthy relationship with art. Your ego and your pride come in and ruin it all. You have all of these unnecessary roadblocks and crap in your way that prevents you from creating authentically. And I've talked to other artists about this as well. They experienced the same sort of journey that I went through. The only sort of like real limitation, if I can call it that, is technical limitations. Those are very real and are roadblocks that you can't just kind of get rid of mentally, right? But removing the ego and the attachment is the last and probably the biggest step to creating authentically. And that's what the end goal is, right? It's creating authentically. Once you reach this point, you'll be 100 times more satisfied with what you do. And that's how you enjoy being an artist. Okay, so I hope you got at least some value out of the crap that I've been yapping about for the past hour. I'm open to different opinions, thoughts, and criticism. Again, no one is above criticism, me included. So please leave a comment, leave your thoughts. I'll try to reply to all of them and maybe even do a follow-up if I feel like that's needed. Like I said before, I only call myself an artist for the ease of conversation. It's easier to say that than, oh, I do this, that, and that. But I do think redefining what an artist is a great step that we as a society can take to undoing a lot of this conditioning and then breaking the cycle a little bit. Even if the definition has to be loose, we can't take it too seriously because, again, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Focus on the work, not the label. To me, an artist is someone that creates art, right? Notice how I don't put any time limit on it. I don't put any sort of, money-related object here. That's my definition. I hope everyone that watches this can change their relationship with their art for the better, and maybe even other aspects of their lives as well. Thanks for watching.